Um, so that's where we go with M files. We also then bring not only that concept of where it is versus what it is, we now also give one access point to all of an organization's information. So I said earlier, it's okay if you're already utilizing SharePoint or file shares, document management systems, Google Drive, whatever the case. We can make all of that available within the M-Files interface, and that M-Files interface is available whether you're on a computer, a tablet, a mobile device, web. We don't care. You have access to it. And obviously, that's the generalization. Obviously, there may be security concerns and whatnot, and you can choose what you actually allow, but we have the capability to do all of that.
John, can I interrupt you for a minute?
You sure can. Go ahead.
Conversational. So am I understanding it correctly that you can, for lack of a better word, integrate a tool like M-Files into Teams or into like a workflow in Teams or those types of things, so it can be used in conjunction with those applications?
It absolutely can. And so what we can actually do is, I mentioned earlier, a lot of folks don't like storing data into Teams because maybe the comfort zone's not there, just the methodology is difficult. We can now take information, put it into M-Files, and then make that available in Teams or in Outlook, various other places.
John, is M-Files like an interface into your existing platform of choice, and it does some kind of organizing of where everything is, or is it actually where you're storing the documents?
Yes and yes. So that's really the beauty. And as we get further into it, we'll talk about some of that. We have the choice of, do we migrate data or not with M-Files. So M-Files is its own intelligent information management platform. And obviously anything new we would ideally put into M-Files because it's easier to deal with, it's structured, we eliminate the human portion of that equation where people don't follow rules because the system forces them to follow the rules. However, if we have an existing SharePoint library, if we have an existing file folder, or we have an existing document management system that maybe we don't like, we can make all of those available and searchable from M-Files. So M-Files is still the one point of access for our teams.
So
and then on the flip side, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So if we have multiple storage options, it can bring it all together in one interface.
Right, and give you searchability across all of those silos, essentially eliminating the silos.
Right.
And then the third piece of what it does is it then allows that information to show up in applications like Teams or Outlook, Google, etc., in your G Suite stuff. So it kind of is doing all of these different things, has the capability to do all of those different things based upon the need of the client organization.
I don't mean to interrupt again, but so that I was looking at your screen here. So can you use M-Files as a, I'm just going to say repository as a general placeholder, as a tool, I'll say tool that interfaces with Teams and maybe Microsoft Dynamics? If you have Dynamics, it can serve as the basically document management for both of those different, even though they're kind of like cousins, right? Yeah. But Dynamics is one thing, Teams is another. You can use it for both.
You have the capability to do both things. Yes.
Interesting.
So I mean, it can really become a powerful thing and break down. And that's one of their focuses and why they call it an information management. It's not just documents. So like in your example, Keith, we may have teams where we're doing collaboration and some workflows and that sort of stuff, but we have to go outside of Teams to go get the data we need, the documents we need, the information we need. We can eliminate that. On the flip side, we may be using Dynamics as an accounts payable system, but we still have to store the invoices and supporting documentation and those sorts of things. We can do that with M-Files. So it's a very versatile platform. And then we start to really get into crazy stuff because, I mean, we're also talking about stuff like OnBase and Laserfish and other content management systems or document management systems. One of the things that really is unique about M-Files in that space is it doesn't have to be a document. Again, we're storing information. So if it's just a matter of, in the Dynamics example, that we want to replicate and make available all of our customer data from Dynamics and make that, say, available to our sales team so that they can make calls with the information from Dynamics without actually having to get Dynamics licensing for our sales team, and or having security or permissions issues with our sales team having access to accounting, we can do that. We actually utilize M-Files internally at HGI and store a tremendous amount of content regarding to customers and prospects, and essentially have set up a CRM which runs within M-Files. But again, one of the examples here you see probably is not SharePoint, is Salesforce. So we can integrate there as well. So it's a very versatile platform. It really comes down to what is it that you want to accomplish, and then we can dig in to make that happen. But yes, it's a silo breaker.
So is this something that you have, like, people are continuously using Teams, they're still using the app, is it constantly pulling from that? So even though people are, say, still uploading things to those other apps, they would just come into M-Files and show up there?
Right. So what we're looking at there is, again, it's going to vary depending upon how the implementation is set up. But typically what we would look at is, ideally when we put the documents away, we're going to do it through an M-Files interface, but then those documents are available so that in Teams I can, send, hey, would you take a look at this invoice? And I don't want to use the word attach per se, but I can leverage documents, an invoice document that may be in M-Files, and send that along with my Teams message. And we can, this is a phenomenal discussion. I did not really come in with the presentation today from a standpoint of focusing it on Office 365 and that all those integrations, but we could certainly do a follow-up if that's of interest, that is tailored into Office 365 and maybe even as a secondary or as even a separate presentation. Not everyone's on Office 365. What if they're in G Suite? How do we do it there?
Right. Yeah, I think a drill down session is a good idea that we should contemplate doing. But yeah, I didn't mean to derail you, so keep going.
It's certainly not a derail. It's an area of importance that people want to know about. But I also know it's a power lunch, which means we ought to be not
Right.
coming out of it exhausted. So I didn't try to do a 2-hour prezo today.
Right. No, it's great information. Yeah, keep going. Like I said, I want us to be able to see the whole thing here, so we can talk about that, doing the follow-up.
Absolutely. I love and I completely understand there's going to be stuff in the conversation today that's not in the slide deck, and that's great because that tells us where we need to go. And I think we may have just set a record for the youngest Power Lunch attendee in history. So
she's been very enthusiastic about the whole thing.
well, she's all about information management. She doesn't want to have to be dealing with this stuff when she's in the workforce.
Right. She just wants to make it better until she gets there.
Very good. So, digging into, yes, we can tie into all these different systems and make them better. Another area where we're going to have some difference from, your file shares and other platforms is that based on that, what it is, information or metadata, we can also then apply permissions and security based on that information. And it can be based on multiple properties. So it may be that based on both location and what portion of the team you're in is how you get access to certain pieces of info. So, it gives you the ability to set that up so that it applies automatically, but still gets very, very granular. And oh, by the way, we also have the ability to give a full audit trail if that is desired, so that we know who touched what did they do with it, all of that depending upon the needs. That again is very difficult to do in a lot of other platforms. We also have workflow. And when we talk about workflow, this is a very simple example of a workflow. We have some of these that look like a bowl of spaghetti. And it's not because we try to make it complex, it's that businesses have complex workflows and we have to be able to support that. So, one of the things we love about mFiles is very frequently the question is not yes or no, can we do it? It is which way would you like to? Um, and that's something that we have in workflow. We don't come in and say, this is the way you're going to run your business. We say, how do you run your business? And we set up the software to work within that. So we have the ability now to have automated rules-based workflows to streamline your business process and make sure nothing gets lost in the cracks. Now, this is an example of what would be an automated rules-based workflow, but we also have the ability to do ad hoc. If I just need to send something to Keith and say, hey, take a look at this, I can do that from within the mFiles interface. Or again, we have the integration into other platforms and can do it there as well. So a lot of versatility again. We talked about the ability to link to a lot of other information repositories. That gives us the ability that migration is not necessarily required with mFiles, because from the mFiles interface, I can have visibility to file folders. I can have visibility to SharePoint. I can have visibility to a box repository that we may have. And I bring a lot of the benefits of mFiles from a search standpoint into play with those. So I can leave it where it is, or I can migrate it to mFiles, and we can make that on a case-by-case determination. But we don't necessarily have to look at everything has to be ripped and replaced, which makes it much more palatable when an organization is looking at doing these sorts of things. One other thing that mFiles brings to the table, and this comes back to, say a comparison versus SharePoint, where SharePoint, everything pretty much has to be built from the toolkit. We have templates and best practices for a lot of different processes that are already put in place with mFiles so that we can rapidly deploy these solutions and get them up and running for you. Even though they are there, those can still be customized as well. I shouldn't say customized, they can be configured, because we're typically not writing code. It's just how are we going to configure the tool to work.